My name is Josh Lee. I'm the co-founder at Osmosis, but also Kepler Wallet. I personally don't come from a developer background. So yeah, it was just like entering into crypto was a big journey, navigating what is the way that I can add value the most. And I was gonna reuse another keynote that I did for another event, and then I was like, nah, I should come up with something new. And one of the videos I've been recently watching is by this game developer, but not developer in the sense of like software gaming, but a card game. So I don't know if you guys have heard of a card game called Magic the Gathering. I've never played it, so I don't know too much about it. But this guy's been just working on this one card game called Magic the Gathering for the past 20 years. And he comes up with 20 lessons that he learned through that. And I highly recommend you to watch it. Also, full credits to the lessons. This isn't something that I came up with. But it was such a great lesson in just building good product, building compelling products. And I think we try to think of gaming and crypto as like crypto gaming, but let's be real. I think a lot of people see using crypto in itself already a game. So I'm just gonna take his 20 lessons and try to see if there were things that we or me personally have been able to kind of apply to Osmosis as a product. So first thing he mentions is fighting against human nature is a losing battle. And let's be real, I think, why do people use DEXs? And obviously some people want to use it to get tokens, but that share, to be honest, is not very big. People want massive APRs. Good old days of 93% APRs on pool number one. Those are the days. And airdrops. So, just realize that humans are economic incentives drive people, and we can all be idealists on what we want crypto to be, but it's a very key way of bringing people in. Number two was aesthetics matter, and we came up with this beautiful looking Wasmington man, and just the fact that we have this icon, I think, has added tremendous amount of value to people knowing Osmosis, feeling like they, as soon as you see this guy, it's an Osmosis thing. And we jokingly within the team always say it's like Kevin, he's the guy that is our illustrator, and it's like, hey, Kevin by himself, by drawing this thing during launch, probably added like, I don't know, millions of total market cap value. And care about these things. Resonance is important, and this was a very, I would say in terms of my personal contributions, the largest one was coming up with the name Osmosis. Why do we choose the name Osmosis, right? It's, as soon as you hear it, you think of liquids being transferred between, semi-permeable membranes. It's a scientific word, so people kind of get that. It's experimental. And, you see sort of a pattern here where we share, almost all of the Cosmos's, characters, like the OS, MOS. And I don't know if you guys were around when we first launched, we sort of played on that where we had Cosmos at the airdrop website, and then the C sort of disappears and the IS just gets added on at the end. And little things like that definitely add tremendous amount of value and kind of relatability amongst the ecosystem you're trying to build for. And speaking of kind of relatability, I think, the fourth lesson that the Magic the Gathering guy was saying was make use of piggybacking, right? Humans are already used to, there's a lot of habits that have been formed by the products that we have already used. And one great example was the assets page. When we went live with Osmosis, IBC as a protocol was live. And we had a very clunky way of doing IBC transfers within the wallet. And to be honest, we still do. We're going to make the improvement on that. But we kind of wanted to revisit that and say, it's like, hey, if we want IBC transfers to be a core part of Osmosis protocol, which it is, how do we abstract that user interface, and you know, just being honest with the fact that hey, no one's going to onboard to Osmosis directly. Anyone who is trying to be an Osmosis user probably has used a centralized exchange, and they probably went through this, screen where there's that. I think Binance does a little bit too crazy, where you have like, I don't know, like 6, 7 buttons on the side. But deposit, withdraw, right? It's a very easy thing, and we're just piggybacking off of a UX pattern that already existed in centralized exchanges, and it sort of clicked when we first launched. And yeah, don't confuse interesting with fun. I think this gets to kind of the mistakes we may have made, right? As someone who's creating an application, I think there's things that I find interesting or I personally find fun, but maybe it's not useful to the user or doesn't make sense. We worked on a lending dashboard that we never shipped. It's a very interesting protocol because we were trying to imagine, hey, if lending protocols, an interface for a lending protocol existed within Osmosis, I'm just trying to think of all the crazy things that that exist in a typical lending protocol's UX pattern, where you have collateral and then you have used this much, but why does that try to get filled up? Wouldn't it make sense to kind of do it more like a health bar? So you recharge your health with collateral and then you kind of take money out of it, and then it's as your health kind of gets down, in a financial sense you're close to getting liquidated, but it's a pattern that, if you played, I don't know, Diablo or something, you're very used to knowing that. It's like, oh, low health bad, high health good. So, yeah, but that was fun for me. It wasn't something that was absolutely necessary or needed for Osmosis. And yeah, just realizing that's probably the case for a lot of products that we think are meaningful to the users, but may not be. And then number 6 was understand what emotion your game is trying to evoke. And from our perspective, I guess this would be what our application is trying to evoke. And yeah, again, with the name of Osmosis being scientific, we basically just branded ourselves as the Interchain Liquidity Lab. And liquidity makes resonance with Osmosis, and we are very intentional with the using the term lab, because I think Osmosis in some ways is more than a DEX, and we are continuing to work on kind of newer different kinds of products that we feel like is still very contextual to the product that we're building, and yeah, we wanna kind of keep that experimental image moving forward as well, and that's why we chose lab. So yeah, science. Allow the players the ability to make the game personal, and I think this was such a big part for us. To be honest, I think this is the part that we haven't made sufficient strides in. I'd love to. We have ideas on how to do this. We just haven't had enough time to allocate this, but I think I fundamentally believe in right now we're building products with the idea of all accounts are basically anonymous, and they're almost just sort of fungible with each other, right? So an account I create today is the same as another account that I created 2 years ago. That it received this Osmosis airdrop. I was a very early, liquidity provider. But I think I want to change that. We want to create a system where your actions on the blockchain essentially creates reputational value to this pseudonymous account. And I think there's ways to kind of incentivize that where, I know I mentioned that hey, don't go against human behavior. And big part of that is economic incentives, but I think we pretty frequently forget that the other big component of incentivizing user behavior is just fun, right? It's like, hey, why do I play a game? I'm not making money on it, just because it's fun. So I think making things personal, making things feel like I do this, and this basically creates who I am on chain. And that doesn't have to, connect to me one-to-one on the meat space. I could have multiple pseudonymous accounts, but just having that, I think, is important. The details are where the players fall in love with your game, and in this case, app. Yeah, we actually never got to ship this part, but things like that, right? Like I think one common thing people, when I first used the bridge, it was terrifying because I was like, okay, money gone from my origin chain's wallet, money not there in my destination chain's wallet. So it's like, it's a little terrifying. I think all crypto noobs sort of get this feeling where you withdraw from exchange, you don't see it in your balances, but like it hasn't showed up in your wallet, so you're like, what in the world's happening? And while you're waiting, it's like, you look for the transaction hash. It's like, hey, did I actually put in the right addresses? And when that tension resolves, like, we can kind of create mechanisms. It's like, hey, it's like all your anxiety's gone. Like, let's celebrate kind of thing. And yeah, I think just building a lot of these kind of very small patterns into existing behavior would be pretty cool. Yeah, number 9 is allowing your players to have a sense of ownership. And that's what we exactly did with the airdrop. Like, as you do things, you get free money that was allocated. That was also based on your Cosmos hubs, staking balance, etc. Leave room for players to explore. We just shipped this new app section, so we want to highlight new applications being built on top of Osmosis or leverages Osmosis. And hopefully we are able to kind of expand this further into the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem as well. Because, hey, what's the point of a decentralized exchange if there's nothing to do when you buy an asset? And yeah, here, number 11 was if everyone likes your game but no one loves it, it will fail. So in crypto, I think we tend to overemphasize user acquisition, but pretty frequently, the retention part gets missed out. And this is a number that I'm like, one of the things I'm just so proud of as someone who participated in building Osmosis was we had Numia basically did an on-chain analytics of, hey, how many of the users that were active during a specific time are still active to a certain date, in case you're familiar with retention. And you see here, it's like, so the first line was basically when we launched, right? And it was pretty fascinating because a year into the launch, we had numbers like 35, 42% of the users that were active a year ago still active a year later. And these are numbers that are very hard to see in the rest of Cosmos, rest of crypto. And in the bull market, you acquire users, but what's key is you retain them in the bear. And how you do that is making sure your users love your product, not just like it. Yeah, and then don't design to prove you can do something. This was a critical mistake that we did. As if you guys didn't know, Osmosis was based on a balancer pool. So we had this ability to do multi-token pools, right? So I thought it was really cool. It's like, oh, you can have a 5-way pool of like Atom, Osmos, stars, whatever, and then you can balance it in different ways. And then, the other cool things was like, oh, I think I went a little bit too crazy. This was a very early, like even pre-launch level, like wireframe I was working on, and I wanted to go crazy with the science lab theme that like, rather than saying tokens in the pool, I was saying things like pool formula or like osmosynthesis for, because you're creating new Osmo by bonding liquidity. It didn't make it because, hey, you're basically just designing something just because you're proving the fact that you name something cool, you have a cool feature. Does the user want it? Probably not. And just coming to acknowledge that. Yeah, so we had things like that in the early design. I think we tried to push it a little bit in the beginning, but today most pools are 50-50, 2-token pools, and that's okay. Yeah, but definitely lessons learned there. And then, yeah, one of the things he also mentioned was make the fun part also the correct strategy to win. I think this is a little bit underexplored for us as well. This is alongside that, make the product personal. I also love to kind of dabble in this area of Osmosis a little more, but yeah, we did this cool little experiment almost exactly a year ago, I think, because Osmosis' birthday is June 18th, which is coming up. So, it's the whole pixels thing, but where you had to stake to a validator of a certain range of kind of voting power. So, if you only were staking to the top 5 validator, the palette that you had was like basically uniform in color, and that's not fun at all, right? So we wanted to do something fun, but also kind of as the part of that process, diversify the voting power. It is more of an event. My hope is the people that took part in this because it was fun and are still very active users of Osmosis eventually get rewarded one way or another. It'd be pretty cool if we do end up launching kind of the Osmo NFTs for a special rare item to be airdropped to the people who participated here. And yeah, games do this really well. So yeah, we're dabbling in the idea of badges. We haven't really executed on things like this yet. Still very early wireframes, but just know that it's deep in our design philosophy and product philosophy to do this down the road. And yeah, don't be afraid to be blunt. I am still working on this, so I'm just gonna pass. And then, yeah, design the component for its intended audience. This was basically one of the first or second iteration of the Osmosis UI back in like maybe March of 2021. And I got help from a very fantastic designer. I believe he's like a senior designer at one of the largest kind of crypto companies in the US. And he used to work at the FANG companies. But when I asked him to kind of help me out, we came up with the exact same UI as Ethereum, which just it's easy to use, it's good, but fundamentally just realizing that Cosmos users who are going to use Osmosis aren't going to be my grandmas and my moms who are trying to buy stars. And oversimplifying things, I think, is a sin. I think people always meme about, the next billion users won't be able to use this, crypto UX sucks. But to be honest, I guess I'll go back to this. Don't be afraid to be blunt. We're not designing Osmosis so your grandma can use Osmosis. We're building Osmosis because it's the people who have used crypto, have some level of knowledge on using wallets, sending transactions and things like that are using Osmosis. And yeah, we came up with something a little bit more crazy, got a little bit of that like experimental degen vibe, and yeah, I think this worked way better. Be more afraid of boring your players than challenging them. And back to this pixels thing, right? You have to realize this, this was the price of Osmo about a year ago, so you can see it's like launched about here, and then this was kind of the peak, and then the birthday was right here. So when I came up with this idea, discussed it with the team, people are like, yo, we just had like the largest, crash and burn of the largest Cosmos chain. Some people lost all their life savings from Terra. So, there were hesitation, right? Very easily and obviously true, where it's like, do we really want to launch a game right after we've had one of the most catastrophic events in all of Cosmos? But people loved it, right? Like you can just see it here, and so many people participated. We had like 4,800 wallets. I don't know if this was final or not. I just happened to see it in one of my folders. If someone else knows, please let me know. But yeah, be more afraid of boring your players, even in the deep bear markets, than challenging and trying something new. And yeah, you don't have to change much to change anything. This is, I guess, I believe it has leaked to Twitter, so I guess that's fine. But we're working on concentrated liquidity, and I'm pretty sure our Osmosis team members have said this for the past many times. But one of the kind of cooler ideas that we came up was like, all right, concentrated liquidity. This is how Uniswap does it, right? It's very simple. So you get price on the x-axis, and you see the amount of available liquidity on the y-axis. And because it's concentrated, you have to set a low range and the high range. And we just kept staring at it. It's like, hey, what are ways that we can sort of change this? And what we realized was like, hey, people are used to seeing price charts with price on the y-axis. Why are concentrated liquidity charts showing price on the x-axis? Like that in itself is already very confusing. And it's also just nice if you're trying to set a range at which prices you're willing to provide liquidity for, have some historical context on how the market's been, right? So we came up with something a little bit, I think interesting, where, to be honest, it's not changing much, right? Basically what we did is we added a price chart and we just moved this thing and flipped it 90 degrees. But when it launches, and it will soon, hopefully it'll be a much more contextual experience where you're able to zoom out and see the market. It's like, oh, so this token's kind of moving up in price. I should probably have nice kind of padding on the upside, so I'm still accruing fees rather than setting it too tight. And hopefully you'll be able to do that on this price chart, and then get a lot more context on where current liquidity is by overlaying this, liquidity on this right side of it. And if you have no clue what you're doing, we have buttons, and it's not much, but it does add up. And restrictions breed creativity was another thing. And this was the state of Osmosis' pool page when we launched. And for various technical and non-technical reasons, we couldn't do much. And we knew that this page was not very easy to read, it's not very easy to search. But basically, when we launched Osmosis, we didn't have a very amazingly polished product. But I think what we realized is that because we didn't have a fully polished product, we had a lot of community members basically kind of fill in the gap by creating their own version. So, this is the state of the pool page, hard to navigate, hard to find which coins, hard to see, which ones have the base APRs. Dexmos came around and launched their own version of, it's like, hey, what are some pools with the maximum amount of APRs when you include external returns, which then eventually they added like an auto compounding tool. And there's like an osmosis filter if you want to favorite certain pools. But ultimately, I think, and I think this is like this idea of restrictions breeding creativity not only works as an internal team-based product building thesis, but realizing that the rest of the ecosystem can also kind of pitch in and add value there as well. And your audience is good at recognizing problems and bad at solving them. And as someone who's building very user-facing software, I think this is a problem we run into a lot, right? So, okay, he told me to be blunt, so I'm trying to do that. But we get a lot of comments on the products that we build, on what works and what doesn't. And the problem is, once we come up with a design, we probably went through like tens and tens and tens of iterations on why something worked and why something didn't. It could be a technical reason. It could just be because, there's various reasons. And I'm not saying we're always right, but, it's easy to say, it's like, hey, this is not working. But typically, if you ask them, how should we fix it? And sometimes it ends up being a solution that we considered as part of our early iterations, then, I think it's a very interesting experience trying to kind of convince them in a very compact way. But I think this is where the building a good team comes in, where you have confidence in your team to have analyzed a lot of the different ways that things can go wrong. And ultimately, you can't have everything. So you have to make the right decisions on which ones to keep, which ones to let go. And no offense, but 95% plus of Twitter has never built anything. So if you're a builder, I respect you. If not, appreciate the feedback, but trying to be blunt here. And all the lessons connect. So I think at the end of the day, a lot of these things ultimately are thesis and methods where you can just kind of combine together to build hopefully a more compelling product. And just like the interchain. So, yeah, love to all the cosmonauts. Fuck you to Gensler. Josh Lee. Bye.